In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to remove unwanted objects from your images. So here's an example of a before and after to remove this power line out of this image, and how to fix up these cracks and weathered parts of this image. Not that either of these images need fixing, but just as an example so you know how to remove things like this from your images. So head into Moodle, run the Photoshop tab, Photoshop exercises, go down to I Got a Healing, and then download this folder. It's got those two images in it. And then we're going to start with the power lines one. That's this one. So right click, open with Photoshop. I'm just going to minimize my history and zoom in a bit. So the first tool I'm going to show you is the spot healing brush, which is this one with the band-aid and the little circle. What we're also going to do is add a layer. So if I was to start using this tool on this image, on this layer, the background layer, it would permanently change that layer, and then I wouldn't be able to edit that or undo it. It would adjust that image. So I'm going to add a new layer. So now we've got a background image and layer 1, and make sure you've got layer 1 selected. Got our spot healing brush tool selected, and then at the top tick sample all layers. I think by default it's unticked, and if you don't have it ticked it won't do anything because it's only sampling the active layer, and in this case that would be a transparent layer. There's nothing for it to sample from. When I tick sample all layers, it's going to sample all of the layers, so it's going to take information from the background layer as well for our healing, which is important. It won't work otherwise. So the first part we're going to remove is some of the power lines. Let's just zoom in a bit. Whoop. Okay, so what I'm going to do is with my spot healing brush, so you can use a spot healing brush to just sort of click and let go. That won't work so well with this with the line because it's sampling from the area around it in the image. For this I'm going to click and drag, and it's going to remove that section. So you don't have to do the whole lot at once, you can work in sections. But if you had, I'm just going to make a mark on this as an example. If I just had a blemish on my image, go back to my healing layer. I'm going to make the brush size a bit bigger than what I want to heal, so you can do that up in this little arrow, or I just use the keyboard shortcut, the square brackets next to the letter P on the keyboard. And then if I just click and let go, that will just heal that spot. All right, so because I'm doing a line, I'm clicking and dragging. I'm just going to undo all that so we don't end up with our black mark on our image. Okay, so I'm making the brush a little bit smaller because it just needs to be a bit wider than the line that I'm trying to heal. You wouldn't want to go too small. It's good to have some space around it, but you don't need to be massive like this because it's drawing in things in that area. So try to keep it as minimal as possible. You can also do like zigzaggy lines if you are healing something that is like that. Cool, and you can tell like I'm not being too precise, I'm being kind of rough, so missed a bit, just go back. So I'm just clicking and dragging, and that's removing this line from this image. Ta-da! So that's the spot healing brush. Really handy, really good tool. So you can go through and remove the rest of the power lines in this image. I'm going to move on and show you the patch healing tool. So right click or long hold on the spot healing brush tool, come down to patch tool. And this one you can like draw an area that you want to fill in. So I've got my patch tool selected. Make sure the options at the top you've got content aware ticked. I think by default it's normal. Change it to content aware, and again tick sample all layers. Otherwise it's sampling the transparent layer and that won't help you. You could also rename this layer healing, or object removed, or whatever you want to call it. Just change it from layer 1. It won't change anything, it's just get into the habit of labeling your layers. Okay, so for this, the patch tool, I'm going to click and drag the area that I want to remove. So I'm just going to draw around this section here, and then it gives me marching ants, so it shows me the selection. This is similar to like how the lasso tool works in the way that it's selecting. Next, I'm going to click and drag, so click inside this selection, drag over to where I want it to sample from. So in this image, I'm going to sample from either side because that's where the color is the most similar. So I'm clicking inside that selection, dragging over to the side where I want it to sample from. It's giving me a preview. So if I drag this down here, it's going to preview what it's going to look like when I let go of the mouse. So I'm holding down the mouse, so I find an area that I want to sample from, let go, and that will heal as best as it can. You can see here it's trying to blend it with the part of the image around it. That's why we've got a bit of these black lines coming in. That's because it's trying to blend with whatever's next to that selection. So for my next part, I'll just select around that. So click and drag around the section. Again, you don't have to be too precise, but try to get it close. And then I'm going to click inside that selection to the part I want to sample. I don't want to be over anything, because if I do this, or if you want to continue some parts of the image, this is a good way to do that too. So if I let go here, oh, it didn't work at all. What is happening? So you can use this to repeat sections of the image too, not just remove objects. Why isn't this behaving? Let me see if I do another section. Oh, I might have some other area selected. I'm just going to deselect everything. I just zoomed out so I could see. Sometimes if you've got another part selected, it's only impacting that section. Try again. Yeah, that's better. I must have had another selection somewhere. So for that, I just hit Command D. So if you go to select, deselect, it's Command D, or Control D on a PC. So for example, if I had like another little section here and then I drew, I mean, it won't do it with the patch tool, but if I had something else selected and then I was trying to heal, it only will pull from that selected part of the image. I think that's what was going on. Anyway, let's try again. We'll continue on. Cool. So you can see here it's trying to like make up the image. When you have those lines removed, you won't get that happening. So start with the spot healing brush to remove all the power lines first. Then use the patch tool to go through the rest of the tower. And then I'm going to show you another tool for this bottom section. So we're going to use the clone stamp tool. It's just 2 below the patch healing, or 1 below your brush tool. So click on that. And this brings up another like brush tool looking thing. And for this, it's a cloning tool like it says. So for this, you need to tell it, with the patch tool, you were selecting the area you wanted to heal or change and then telling it where to sample from. This clone stamp tool works the other way around. You tell it where you want it to sample from and then you click where you want to remove or change the image. So I'm going to remove this part here where the hills are in the background. So I want to sample this part of the hill. So I'm going to hold the Option key or the Alt key and see how that becomes like a target. And then I'm going to click where I want it to sample. So I just clicked in that area. And now if I go, see my sample's not turned on the right. It's not, usually it'll give you a preview of where it's going to heal, and this isn't looking any different. So that tells me I've got my sample settings wrong. So I'm going to change that to all layers. And see, now it's giving me a preview. I'll make that brush bigger so you can see. It's giving me a preview. When I click, that's what it's going to look like. This also has a lot of feather on it, or the edge is really soft. That's the brush setting, so I can make that a bit harder. Don't go all the way 100% hardness because you want it to blend with the background still. So you want a bit of softness. And for this, I'm not going to click on the image to click off there, because see how that did, like it activated that tool. So if you're in the settings here, to get out of them, either click on that arrow again or just click on the bar at the top. Don't click on the image. Okay, so I'm going to sample again. So I'm holding the Option or Alt key. I'm going to click here and then drag over and try to line this up as best I can. So click, click. I might sample this side, hold the Option, sample from over here to join this up. Click, and just do your best to line it up. If you go a bit wonky, so if I sample over this side, like if you go too high, for example, like that's what your image is going to look like now. It's going to undo that. So take some time with your sampling and clicking. So again, it's the Option key or the Alt key. Click where you want to sample from and then go over where you want to sample to. You can make your brush as big or small as you like. And then click. You can click and drag. It'll just keep sampling. I didn't explain that. So you see that little cross that pops up next to the brush? That's where it's sampling from. It's telling me I'm sampling from this area. With the clone stamp, you don't want to like click and drag too much because it is duplicating this area of the image and putting it here, and it can look really obvious that you've done that. So I like to sample from a couple of different areas and kind of blend it a bit better. And that way it doesn't look so obvious that you've used the clone stamp tool. Just trying to get that angle looking good. And then see, like this area is very obviously this part duplicated. You might go over that section, or you could use the spot heal or the patch heal to kind of cover up any obvious bits. Okay, so you can finish that off using spot healing brush, the patch tool, or the clone stamp tool. And I want to show you another magical thing. I'm going to turn that healing layer off, create a new layer. I'm going to call this one Content Aware. Content Aware is like Photoshop's magic tool. When it first came out, everyone lost their minds. It was so cool. It used to be a lot of work to do things like this. And then Content Aware came in and we're like, oh, cool, we're all obsolete now. So let me show you what that's about. I'm going to select the lasso tool. So I had it on the polygon. I'm just going to change it back to a lasso tool. And then, well, actually we could use a polygon. Doesn't matter. Use any tool to select everything. I'm just going to do a really rough selection around this whole tower. I should have zoomed out first. That would have made it easier. Trying to scroll with the trackpad. All right. So we've got our whole tower and the power lines selected. So I've done that with the lasso tool. You could do it with the polygon lasso tool, which is just click, let go, click, let go, click, let go. So with the lasso tool, you have to click and drag and hold the mouse down. With the lasso tool, you click and let go. Cool. And then I'm going to, so I've got my Content Aware layer selected. Going to Edit, Fill, and then where it says Content, change that to Content Aware. So Content Aware will pop up in different tools. This is just one way to use Content Aware. So this is with Edit, Fill. And because I've got that selection, it's going to fill this selection with Content Aware. And what that means is it's going to have a look at your image. Photoshop will have a look at your image and have a go at what it thinks you want it to do, which is fill this area with parts of the image or sampling from other parts of the image. So sometimes it does this really well, sometimes it's not so good, but definitely play around with it. It's so cool. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. Not enough sauce. Have I got... Hang on, let me just... I might need to duplicate the background layer. Does this give me the option? Nope. Okay, so remember before it had like sample all layers? It doesn't give me that option here. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to duplicate the background, call this one Content Aware. So instead of having a new layer that's empty, I've duplicated the background image. So we've got a whole image here. I've still got that selection active. Now I'm going to go into edit fill. There's also content aware fill here. This gives you some more options about where you want to sample from. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but if you wanted more control about where it's sampling, this gives you a whole bunch of options. Just hit cancel on that. We're going to do the basic version, which is just going to fill, change that to content aware, hit OK. Cool, and it's just removed that whole tower for me. It's going to go to select, deselect, get rid of that selection. And it did a really good job of this image. Like, what? Amazing. Sometimes it can look really kind of patchy and blurry and awful. So it does depend on your image. So if you wanted more control, yes, you could go into content aware fill and then specify the areas of the image you want it to be sampling from. But in this case, what power. So good. So once you're done with that, save it, chuck your name on it, save it as a PSD. And then if you want to have a go at the other image, which is this teapot image, just to remove these marks in the background. So new layer, use whatever tools you like. You could use a combination. This is the patch tool, click and drag. Or you can use the spot healing brush, make that brush really big. Just click and let go. We'll get rid of that. So have a go on this image as well, just for extra practice. And using a combination of spot healing brush, the patch tool, and the clone stamp tool. You could also play around with the content aware if you like. So there we go. There's some basic ways of how to heal images or remove objects or remove blemishes or marks that you don't want in your images. Beautiful. Have fun. See ya.